And I realized those weren't there 10 years ago, and the price of them has come down by a factor of 5. And our other renewable energy generation, we're getting the foundation for a lot of things to do right, but we're not getting the political will to put it to highest priority. Yeah.
Just sort of a follow-on question, and a kind of a personal question. Were you able to have some part in the Paris talks, or do you have colleagues in China? I mean, do you share are you able to influence people in
See, it's
on a
pretty
global
interesting, those real
scale?
high-level diplomatic negotiations, there's almost no scientists there. We do our job in writing things like IPCC reports. Once it gets to the politicians politicking, they actually don't want to hear from us. And so I know of few people that went to Paris, and you really don't go to something like those Paris summits unless you're a formal delegate of some entity. If you just show up as a random Steve Running Boy scientist, you won't even get in the door.
But so in China, how is it their political system that they were able to, your colleagues were able to make?
See, the interesting thing with China is there's times when democracy isn't the most efficient. And by God, when China decides to do something, the next Monday at 8 a.m., they start doing it. And so they've made some very significant decisions, strategic decisions for the country, and they can put it into play at just stunning speeds compared to our system.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wondering if you could speak a little bit to the concept of tipping points or feedback loops.
Yeah, in the climate system, a number of factors you might say are rather continuous. We're a little bit more like CO2 traps a little bit more energy. But then there's certain attributes that can be very much a tipping point, and probably to me the absolutely best example is think of sea ice the day it melts. You have a surface that goes from white and highly reflective to black water. And so the solar energy that hit that ice the day before was mostly reflected because it's so bright it's like a mirror. And once that ice is gone, suddenly you've tipped that energy balance to where almost all that solar energy goes right into that water. And so when you look around a complex system like a climate system, you've got a mix of some of these continuous functions and some of these threshold functions, and they're just all mixed around in the system. Yeah.
One more question, but I know people probably, some of you are a little bit uneasy. You know, feel free to leave it the fact you do need to.
Go ahead.
So, thinking about this globally, but thinking about acting a little more locally. So, two thoughts here. One is biomass. We talked about generation. I think of biomass here in the Bitterroot. I think primarily wood heating for residential heat because you use the biomass. And some thoughts on that. And then the other one is talked a lot about transportation. And when I think about transportation, I think of public transportation and efficiencies there. And whether even it's just, you know, regular bus routes up and back to Missoula, or just like a shuttle kind of thing around in town, and those sorts of thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with the bioenergy. Probably most of you know that the Darby Grade School, right, has a quite advanced bioenergy. I think it's heating only. I don't think it's electric power production. What you see in these systems that are the cogeneration, are ones that do generate both electric power and heat. And those, I really keep hoping the University of Montana will go with one of these. It'd be a tremendous educational resource for our students. But those actually have some pretty impressive efficiency. And the big place where bioenergy is worth it is where you have, let's call it biomass residue, of which all our beetle-killed forest and all our wildfire-killed forest are good examples, where you've got this biomass that's gonna rot away anyway, it's dead and it's gonna rot away, and we either let it rot away on its own or we try to use it. What doesn't pencil out is is things like corn production, where you have high resource demands for fertilization and processing and things like that. This is where bioenergy doesn't seem to pan out. But I think the right kind of plan around here to do some cleanup of some of our dead forests with a cogeneration plant in the right place is the sort of thing I think is where bioenergy can win. Now, what was the second?
Transportation.
Oh yeah, transportation. You know, I'm a big train riding nut. I just love riding trains. And yet the sad truth is you have to have a certain density of population for it becomes even close to being worth doing. And there's just no chance that Montana has that density.
Run. I mean, there's a lot of traffic that goes back and forth
Yeah.
between Missoula and Hamilton
Yeah.
on a regular basis, but bus line.
Yeah. Now, why is it riding the trains more fun than riding a bus? I've thought about that for years.
Get up and
We all
stand
know
around.
it's more fun, but I'm not. So one of the things I found is in America, when we think of a train, we think of like a 10 or 12 car Amtrak. In Europe, they have these little single car trains where the car is the engine. It has a driver's seat on both ends, and so it has an engine, a double-decker cab, and it's a single car. They're called weasels in Austria, and I love riding weasels. And so train traffic, if you thought of it as these sort of highly efficient little single-car trains, would pencil out way better than a 10-car Amtrak. And I think part of what wrecks our American railroad strategy is they always think in 10-car Amtraks when they think of passenger trains, and that isn't necessary. Yeah.
Part of the Paris climate talks agreement was to sequester carbon through agriculture. You know, and all the countries would
Yep.
sign on to a certain amount, 4% a year or something like
Yeah.
that. What do you think?
That I'm gonna get rich beyond my wildest dreams, because I'm a terrestrial carbon specialist. Yeah, so I think it's going to be, this is a great example of where we can crunch our theory with our carbon models. We can do the carbon cycle analysis in our forests pretty straightforwardly. But I guess I'd say the logistics and the economics of actually managing forests for optimum carbon sequestration are sufficiently difficult that it isn't going to, I don't have high hopes for developing countries that have very little technical
I
expertise.
thought it was mostly agriculture.
With agriculture, we can put lots of carbon in the soil. Yeah. And so this is something where it's just good agricultural practice anyway. So there ought to be a win-win capability for improving agricultural production. I mean, the no-till that already is quite popular is a good step of increasing soil carbon in agricultural soils. And so the thing that gets tough is the bean counting part. And when I imagine carbon trading, which is where that is headed, there's so many ways you could game the system that I'm not very hopeful. I'm actually more of a fan of a pure carbon tax, which some Republican economists in the last couple months have started raising up. And I think a straight carbon tax would be cleaner and way less bureaucratic. And we have some political chance that it could get passed. All right, I wore 'em out.
Thank you. Excuse me, as you folks are leaving, I want you to please walk away with this idea that one of our objectives in literacy planning is to share information and give people an opportunity to decide on how they do things for themselves. And I would suggest that you think about some of these data that you've seen, think about them in your own terms, come to your own conclusions, and talk to your legislators. If in fact you're so inclined. Thank you for your patience and your time. It's certainly